and welcome to another episode of FooBar. Today we are going to talk again with Jeremy Daly. We are continuing our discussion from last week, and in this video we are going to see a working demo of Serverless Cloud, the latest release from Serverless Inc. that will help developers to get started in the cloud. So let's get started with the chat with Jeremy. I want to talk about what you have built in Serverless Inc., but maybe you can guide us through, we have talked about all these developers and all these problems that developers have. So how the launch that you have done recently, like in beta launch, what it is?
Why don't I share my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, so what we've been working on, so my whole, I think my whole serverless career, basically. So I started this, very early on, 2016? I can't even remember now. I started working with Lambda a very, very long time ago, pretty much right at the beginning, and discovered serverless framework very early on. And I loved it. It was easy. It was so simple to just deploy something. But as we just talked about, life has gotten complicated, right? I mean, we've got all these different services. There's all kinds of crazy things that are happening, all kinds of configurations you need to think of. There's a whole serverless lens to the well-architected framework in terms of how you should be logging and monitoring and observing your applications, and then everything to do with, how you're configuring security and some of these other things that we talked about, with IAM permissions and some of that stuff. So I've been trying to build all kinds of, open source projects that just make life easier. I built something called Lambda API. That was basically like Express, but specifically for Lambda and optimized for serverless environments. I built DynamoDB Toolbox, which was a way to sort of abstract single table design into entities and make some things easier. And so about a year ago, Austin came to me and had this idea for Serverless Cloud. And it was the idea of basically making it so you could launch and develop serverless applications, but as a developer that didn't know Lambda and API Gateway and Event Bridge and all these other things that were happening behind the scenes. So we spent a couple of months sort of talking about this. I eventually joined the company.
And a backend developer we are talking here, because, for example, when we talk about Amplify and a lot of these type of tools, it's more focused on a front-end developer, but this is
correct.
For back-end developers.
This is more for back-end developers, right? Yeah, so this is for people who like building Express apps and things like that, that kind of level of developer. We are, hoping that, the front-end developers can use this as well, and be able to, build out their front-end apps. Maybe you're using Vercel or Netlify or even Amplify or something, you need to build some of the front-end pieces of this, and then being able to use Serverless Cloud, as sort of the back-end application piece. So what we did is we said, how can we make it so it's super easy for people to just launch applications and just write code, and not have to think about some of those other back-end things. So this is the landing page, and if anybody wants to try this out, it's open right now. You just click the Join the Exclusive Launch button here, and you can sign up. You get an activation code. We're letting a bunch of people in. We're going to cap it at some point, but right now we're just trying to get a bunch of people in and see how they like it. We are not in beta anymore. This is ready to go. You could build an application on this today if you wanted to, and we'll have custom domains and a couple of other things just to help you, sort of share this with the world. Coming very soon. Actually, by the time this is live, it'll probably be there. But here's the basic idea. We want serverless development to be super fast, right? And what we've noticed is if you're in this process of having to write YAML or even CDK or any of these things and then deploy it to the cloud, wait for it, run your tests, maybe you run some integration tests, things like that, it takes a while. And I know people love mocking a local environment, and I kind of don't like that. I think in certain circumstances it works, but it's really hard for you to test event-driven applications in a local environment. And what happens if you have to test across multiple services and you need an event to be generated here and then go there, and you want to test step functions and some of these other things? It just gets really, really complex. So our idea is to basically make it super fast. I'll show some of these things, but we have fast deployments, fast feedback, super fast performance. This is all running on AWS right now, which is super super helpful. Super powerful, I should say. we have a whole abstraction for APIs, right, to make it super easy to do APIs. We have a whole abstraction for data, which is all communicating.
So no need to learn Dynamo.
You don't need to learn Dynamo. You don't need to set things up. Right. It's all there for you. I mean, again, we're limited in terms of some of the things that you can do. Right. Not everything is in this yet, but some of the things that we have as well, and I'll show you, is this idea of it being forkable. And so basically, you can write an application with data, and then we're working on a way right now for you to actually share that with people, so that then they can just go ahead and copy that and launch their own app, right? So it's like GitHub, but with live applications, right? So it's super cool. I'm probably not giving it its full due, but I'd love to show you, if I can do this quickly here. Jump over to my terminal, and I'm gonna resize this window here. So there's a cloud package that you can download. It's just npm, if I do it right, npm.com/package serverless cloud here. So this is just this is the package that you can download. What we tried to do with this is kind of interesting. It's both your CLI locally, but it's also the package you include in your application code. And I'll show you that in a second. But what's cool about that is that it's just one thing to deal with. You don't have to worry about like installing all these different dependencies. It's one dependency, and then we're doing a whole bunch of magic on the back end. So even though you're installing this dependency, we're only actually deploying the things that you really need, and so forth.
And then coming back to what we were talking before,
yep.
Here you are running everything. So you don't need an AWS account.
Right.
You don't need to manage whatever resources. So what we were talking before, like running your own Lambda functions, then you care how Lambda works. Here, can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I think that's super interesting.
Yeah, so right now what we do is we're managing all the deployments for you. And again, you'll see how the deployments work, and it's pretty crazy. But because we're managing all that for you, we're actually pre-provisioning AWS accounts. And so we control access to those accounts, and so that you don't have to worry about setting up AWS. You don't have to worry about IAM permissions. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff. You just create an account with Serverless on serverless.com, and that allows you to log into the cloud, and then you can authorize it through the CLI, which you can just log in through the CLI, and then that gives you the ability to do that. And we have teams and some of these other things that are all part of it. We'll be adding in more RBAC, so more role-based access control, who can deploy to what, and some of those things. But the whole point here is, like, you can get started instantaneously. So if I click this join the exclusive launch, this essentially is going to take me right into the dashboard now. If I wasn't signed in, let me sign out quickly. But take me to this. I just go ahead and log right in, and this logs me in, or create an account if I don't have an account yet. And this gives me this immediately gives me access to the cloud here. So it gives you a little thing. You got to download that, download an npm and install the cloud package. But essentially, all I have to do now is just type cloud. And so I type cloud, and this is going to walk me through, and we're even optimizing this experience. And that looks like I am logged in to the wrong account here. So I'm going to do cloud logout, and then cloud log in. Here, and this will just log me into the cloud. All right, should be good. Okay, good. So now I'm logged in, and now if I type cloud, clear that, cloud, then this should walk me through, Jeremy Daly is where I want to be. Okay, so it says your default org is Jeremy Daly, so yes, I'm going to use that organization. Enter an existing service name or a new service name to initiate in this directory. So I'm just going to call this FooBar. And I'll initialize this. This will go ahead and create this, and notice that it just dropped a bunch of files in here for me. This is a test. This is an example app. And so it said, okay, now it's connected to my instance. It automatically is doing file syncing and log streaming, copied the personal instance URL, and it's seeded data. So now I get this URL. If I open up this URL over here, I immediately have an application. Wow. And I already have data in it.
That was so fast.
Right. And so now I have a fully functioning application that is running in the cloud and is live with a URL. Now, this URL is your personal URL, so anytime I make changes to the code, this will actually update. So this is where it gets Really, really cool. And again, there's so much here, so I'll try to kind of keep it brief, but kind of give you some of the walkthroughs.
I'm sure then you can share some links where people can go and learn
Right,
more.
yeah, there's all kinds of documentation and stuff like that, and we'd love to, as you give us more on the documentation side of things. I don't know why that took so long to do the syntax highlighting. But anyway, so here is my code for this right now. So basically, there's the Serverless Cloud package, and we do what we call helper functions here. So these are our little helpers, API, data, schedule, params. So you can just go ahead and import this right from Serverless Cloud, right? And so in our package.json, you'll see it's just a standard JSON or package.json. It's got the name of my app. It's got, some information here. There's some, you can also run like npm start if you wanted to. And then just a couple of dev dependencies and then just a little service thing that says this is my org and this is the service that I'm running, but pretty straightforward, nothing complex there. But I am importing this package Serverless Cloud. Now, what this allows me to do...
Those are like your primitives now.
Right. These are sort of the services, primitives. Yes, you can call them primitives if you want to. We kind of try to stay...
might create an API gateway, but I don't care. I don't know.
Right. You don't care. Exactly. And so the idea here is, though, like you do API.get. So this is very, very much so Express-like. So this, if you've used Express, this is going to look exactly the same. We're actually using most of Express under the hood. And we might even expose Express so that if you just want to use Express, you could just use Express. You don't necessarily have to use ours. But this, obviously, I don't want to walk through all this code, but here's a GET request to to-dos. It uses this GET to-dos that I'll show you in a second. This actually, I don't know, doesn't need to be in the sample app, but that's okay. But then you've got a post thing here, and you've got a couple of other things that there's a delete command here, and then you can use API use if you're familiar with Express. That's just a middleware function. But then we have cool things like schedule.every. So here you can schedule something that every 60 minutes it'll go ahead and run and actually do something where it checks for, in this case, it checks for overdue to-dos, for example.
That might be a CloudWatch kind of thingy.
It's like maybe it's a CloudWatch rule, right? Maybe? Yeah, exactly. But anyway, so and then there's just a little helper function I wrote down here that gives you the ability to that just does the query for you, so you don't have to write this in all the places you do the get to dos. But the point of this, which is pretty cool, is I'm just going to go and show you this piece first. So we have a static folder, right? So you can do static site hosting, or you can do static hosting for any assets that you need. But if I go into this index file, for example, and I've got my welcome to Serverless Cloud, this actually shouldn't say Serverless Cloud beta, I should say exclusive launch. So I'm going to type in exclusive launch here, and then I'm going to save this. And as soon as I click save, down here it's telling me that it's syncing. And this process here usually takes about 5 seconds. This is probably the first time I'm syncing, so it took 7. We're actually working on this where we're hoping to get it to less than 3 seconds, maybe even faster than that. But this is synced. So now over here in my live application, it now has updated this with the change that I made here. And what's cool about this is the workflow, the idea for this workflow is basically to say like, oh, I need an API get route for something. So I'm going to type in API.get. I'm going to have that respond to /test, right? And I'm going to use my my res convention for I gotta put a comment here. Sorry,
nobody's touching you.
I'm never good at live coding. Yeah, I'm just gonna right. I'm just gonna put this in here, just a simple test, and I'm just gonna do res.send, and I'm gonna say it worked. Right, so I've created this here. And now again, if you think about, maybe I have to set up a YAML file with Lambda function, say point it to this and tell it how I want to work. I don't have to do any of it. I just hit save, right? And this does this syncing, and this will go ahead and create any API routes that I need and anything that needs to happen. And so immediately when I go here now and I just do /test, I think we need to do
another episode on how the hell the magic is going on here, because this is so cool.
That's the other crazy thing. A lot of really interesting magic behind the scenes here, and that's kind of the point, right? And so, like, the other thing that's kind of cool here is I'm going to change this to /data, and I just want to show you a couple bits of the data piece of this. But so if I'm doing, I'm going to do, let's see, result here. So if I want to access data, I have a very cool thing where I can just use this data helper function, and I can just do data.get, and I can actually request something. So here I'm going to say I want to do, well, let me do this. I'm going to make it a little bit easier. I'm going to set something, and I'm going to call this test, right? Make it super easy. And in test, I'm just going to set a variable, or set a value, and I'm just going to do a string, and I'm going to say, string value here. All right. So what I'm doing here is I'm setting something called test, a key called test, with a value of string value. I'm going to await this because this is how JavaScript works. But then I'll do let result equals data. Oh, I got to await it. Sorry. Await data.getTest, like Copilot automatically filling that information in for me. So I'll save that. So now I save this, and this is going to sync. And while that's syncing, I'm just going to go over here and change this to /data. All right, that's synced. So I hit data, and now I get string value here. Now, obviously, because I've saved it, I can comment this out, save this again, let that sync. And then when that syncs, obviously that test value is now saved in my database, so I can request it again, and that's saved. So that's super simple, set a value, get a value, right? Helpful for all kinds of things. But just so you know, you don't have to do anything. Data is just there. It's just there for you. You don't have to worry about anything to do with data. It's just there. And with this, which is cool, is you can do all kinds of really cool things. Like if I wanted this to be more complex, so I say foo, and I set a value of bar here. I can set this as an object. This can obviously be a nested object with a whole bunch of things in there. Why is it giving me a weird...
Wrong
I'm missing
quotation marks.
Wrong quote. Oh, yeah, look at that. Okay, sorry, it's on a small screen here. So I can go ahead and set this something like this. We'll save it, and we will get a refresh here in a second, and sync. So I refresh, and now I get FooBar, right? I get an object back, and that's just scratching the surface, because what I really have some cool things to do is I'm going to show you this data.json file. So these are all those to-do items that I put in originally, the ones that we see over, oops, let me go back to this. The ones that we see over here. These are those to-do items. And so these to-do items are just, these are not, by the way, again, just sometimes get confusing. This is not where it's pulling the data from, right? So if I make changes over here or whatever, like it doesn't, it's not affecting this. This is just a seed file where I can seed data into it. But you notice that these are like to-do:1, to-do:2, to-do:3. I can use these very cool, what we call collections, right? And so when I use the collections, I can actually do something like this. I can say, I want to bring back to do, and I could say, I want to bring back to do number 1, or I could say, I want to bring back all my to-dos. So you do to-do star, right? And then if you save this, I'm gonna open a new window or a new tab over here and /data. So once that's synced, so now what this will do is this will bring back all of those to-dos for me, right? And I can even do cool things here where I can say, like, I want any to-do that's greater than 3, for example. And I save that, and that'll go ahead and give me, as soon as that's synced, that'll go ahead and give me just the to-do number 4. Or I could say something like, give me to-dos that are between 2 and 4, with a little pipe character there. And that'll go ahead and limit these and should just give me 2, 3, and 4 for these, for the items that come back, 2, 3, and 4, right? So I can do some really cool things. I don't have it, well, I guess I can, yeah, well, let me show you this. So then the other thing you can do too is there's this really cool feature that we have that are called labels that act basically as like GSIs, right? So you can actually query things based off of a GSI by using the labels. So if I wanted to go in and I wanted to say get by
GSI, global secondary index, for those that don't
yes,
have
sorry,
a clue
global
about
secondary
Dynamo.
indexes for those who, yeah, for that. But basically what it is I can say, all right, I want to find all of the, I want to get by label, I want to get by label 1, right, because that's what I had labeled them as, and I want to go ahead and I want to get everything that, oh, it filled it in for me, incomplete star, right? So this would just show me all of my incomplete, all my incomplete data, or all my incomplete tasks here. And that'll come back here and give me all my incomplete tasks, right? So now I can just see these. If I wanted to just show my complete tasks like this, I can do that. That'll give me just the complete ones. And then if I did something, just to get the thing so I can see it. So incomplete. So if I wanted complete that was greater than a certain time, for example, right? So I can just go in and say I want all my complete ones, but only the ones that are greater than this particular date. I missed the 2.
There's something 2 missing.
Something like this. But anyway, so basically it's super easy to write these queries. You don't have to think about it. And there's a really cool, well, it's not synced yet, sorry. Sync now. And there's a really cool workflow around this that will allow me to use different sets of data if I want to run different tests. So for example, if I go back to this post here, let me delete this, and I'll go ahead and delete this one. Maybe I'll add a new one. This is a test. And add this in. So I've gone ahead and I've added a couple of things, deleted a few things, but now I'm in my sample app and I'm like, oh wait, I want to restore the data that I had before so that I can go ahead and do my tests again, right? I can just type in import, and actually I don't even need to type that. So import, and then I can just do -- overwrite or -o, and what this will do is it'll take any of the data that's here, and it will rewrite
JSON.
all of the data for me here. So now I have a fresh set of data like this. And what's cool is if I want to take this file and let me open this up, and I'll do file save as. I'm in the wrong thing here. File save as. We'll call this. I'll call this, I don't know, users or something like that. Now I could go in here, and if I wanted to, I'm just going to change these so that it's simple, but I'll say test, and I'll say, test 1, 2, 3, whatever it is. So now I can do this, and then I can come in here and I can say, well, that's syncing that there, but I can go into my, here, and I can say import, and I can say import users.json. And overwrite that. And then if I do this, this will go ahead and overwrite these and give me updated things here with these, right? And so I have all kinds of really cool capabilities where I can overwrite the data, I can refresh the data, I can do all kinds of cool things. And even once I have all my data saved, like maybe I get my data into a certain state with this, then I can actually just do this. If I want to create my own test files, I can just do export, and I'll do test.json or something like that, and now this will actually take what I have, export into test.json, and now I can use this if I want to re-import this at another time, right? So I've got a really cool data workflow that I can do things with. But I want to show you this because this is where the workflow aspect of it. Well, actually, let's take a break just in case you have any questions. There's a lot here. I know. I'm sorry.
I think I'm going to the same place and you because I want to see how the workflow works. Because that's normal to have maybe different stages or different, like how you work with like your dev environment or production or things like that. So I think you were going in the same way than me. This is super cool.
I was. So the cool thing about the workflow aspect of this is, so let me go in and just, I'm going to make a change here, and I'm going to do, so we've got this main page of our thing saying, welcome to the cloud exclusive launch. And I'm just going to go into this and I'll say, welcome to Serverless Cloud. And I'm going to type in here, this is my personal, or I'm going to type in, let's say, dev or prod. How about I do that? I'll do, this is production. I'll type in production there. So I save this here, and this is just, again, updating a static HTML file. So we haven't done anything workflow related yet. But once this is synced, so this should say Serverless Cloud production. Okay, so now what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to take this and I want to move this into production, because right now this is not production. This is just this is what is called my personal development instance. So if you and I, Marcia, were working on this project together, you would have your own copy, your own independent stack, your own database. Everything would be completely yours and wouldn't touch mine. It's completely isolated, separate AWS accounts and everything all behind the scenes. It's very, very cool how we do that isolation. So you have that. But if I say, look, I want to share, first of all, what I want to do is I want my front end team to be able to play with this application. Maybe I'm just deploying maybe I'm deploying just an API or something like that. So I can just
or something like that.
Right. So I can just type in the word share, and I hit share. And what this is going to do is this is actually going to generate an entirely new instance of this thing with its own data, with everything completely on its own. And now it's giving me this new thing. It's called Jeremy-WXABZ. But now I've got a new URL here. So this is Reliable Stack. And this is what I just published, including all of my data, right? So now I can share this with whatever data I had seeded in there, and I can give people access to this, and they can play around with it. And if I go back to my other version of this here, which is my local version, if I go in now, my development, so if I go in though and I change this to, I'll say Jeremy's, oops, that's not how you do that, Jeremy's version. I can go ahead and save this. And now this is syncing, but this is only syncing with my personal development environment. So this one here, pragmatic, right? This is the one that if I refresh this will now say Jeremy's version. And then if I go back over to this one that I shared, this will still say production. And as I make changes to this one here, delete things, do whatever, it has absolutely no effect on this isolated version here. So I can continue to develop, and I can continue to be doing these things. And then actually, as I make some changes and I do some other stuff, I could actually go and I could share over this again. Now, I won't get into the details of this, but for CI/CD, this can be set up so that you share every time you do a PR, every time you do a feature branch, every time you update those things. So this can all be integrated into your workflow that makes it super easy for you to, like preview builds, essentially is what it is.
But so you can add this into, I don't know, code pipelines, code build or something.
Right, yes. Like you could, I mean, you can use GitHub Actions. The GitHub Actions for this are so simple. It's kind of, and we're actually building in some CI/CD capabilities so you can just connect directly to your account. But so here's another cool thing, and this is what I talked about with the whole forkable cloud thing. So I've got two versions of this now. I've got my local version, and I've got this version that I've shared with people that can play around with it. I can now do clone. I can type in clone, and then I can type in the one that I want to clone. So I type in this one here. Now again, these I'll get to where we name them something different, where you're naming them production or whatever. That did not work. I missed the J, do J there. So and now if I hit clone, it's not supported in Cell. That's right. I got to exit out of this first and do cloud, clone, and then paste in this. And then
you did cloud.
I did, yep. Cloud. Okay, cloud, clone, hit Jeremy here. And then what this will do is it's not empty, so I got to overwrite it. Yes, I do. I cannot see that. So I type in yes, I want to overwrite it. Get back into here. Yes. And now what this does is this is going to clone this production version. It's going to clone it back into this version here. So when I refresh this version here, this is now my the production version that I shared again. So the whole point is that let's say that you share a copy of this app and you say like, hey, I launched these changes, check it out. And I say, that's great. I'm going to make some changes to myself. You can just go ahead and clone what you just did, and then I can make some changes and then share it, and then you can clone it. So it doesn't do diffs. It's not like it's GitHub, and does some of the VCS stuff, but it is pretty cool in terms of how some of this stuff works. So anyways, so now I've got my production app back, and I can go ahead and type in cloud again, get back into this interactive shell. So now I'm back. That's why that's showing up there, and I don't want that to. There we go. So I'm back in my interactive shell. I've got my production here, and now what I want to do is go ahead and deploy this to production. I mean, I could do staging, I could do test, I could do whatever, but all I have to do is just go ahead and type deploy, and I want to deploy it to prod. So I do that. This goes ahead and runs this deployment thing. It takes 5, 6, 7. 8 seconds, 7 seconds, whatever it was. I now have a live production app that I've shared. Now, something interesting. There's no data here, okay? And the point is that there's no data because when you actually deploy something, you don't want to be overwriting your data. So as part of the sharing workflow, you share the data because you kind of want to see that, but as part of the production workflow, you don't, right? So now that you've got this production app here, and again, if we wanted to go ahead and add to-dos and some of these other things, you can do that
now
here.
You can add those, and if you deploy again, it doesn't overwrite your data.
It doesn't overwrite the data, right? Yes, exactly. And what's cool here is that now in my dashboard, I have obviously my FooBar service. I'm going to click on my FooBar service, and now I can see that I've got my production stage.
You can see all the stages.
All the stages. So here's my personal instance. This here is a preview instance, right? And once I say, these will automatically get deleted from CI/CD, but if you're like, oh, I don't need this instance anymore, I'm just going to go ahead and delete this. Nice. So now I've deleted that instance there. And when I do that, I think that was the reliable stack one, right? Yeah. It just takes a second, but this eventually will go away, and this URL will no longer be available. So again, it gives you this super simple workflow to kind of move things through production. Now, if I'm using Git, for example, and I'm using GitHub, and that's how I want to move things through production, I can do a super simple Git workflow where I just check my code into Git here. That can merge into a feature branch, or you can merge it directly into main or whatever you're using, and then you can have it automatically deploy to a testing stage or whatever. We also have this cool command where you can type they're called promotions. So if I actually wanted to deploy, let's say I wanted to do a dev stack here, I deployed a dev. This will go ahead and create another instance for me, which again should take about 6 seconds, 7 seconds or so. So now I've got my dev stage here. And then what's cool is I've deployed to dev, and what I should do is I'm going to do test 1, 2, 3. Hold shift down. So I'm going to save this here. This will sync obviously and give me the thing there on my local instance, but I'm going to skip over that, and I'm going to deploy to dev again. So this is going to go ahead and deploy to dev and give us that URL, which I think was here, right? So let me open this. So this just deployed. So if I refresh this, was that the right one? No, this is the dev URL. This one here. So now it says test 1, 2, 3, right? So I've got that there, and then my production URL, which I got too many things open, so I'm going to close a bunch of these. But from here, I have my prod stage, and you can just go ahead and launch your URL quickly. So this one says production, this one says test 1, 2, 3, and then right here, if this is the workflow that I want to use, I can do promote, and I just say dev, and I want to promote to prod.
Oh, nice.
I hit enter. This goes ahead and does the promotion for me. This just takes a couple of seconds. Should be a counter there, and it's done. And so now this was my test 1, 2, 3. Here was my production app. I refresh this, and now I'm at test 1, 2, 3. So it's just super easy to move your code around. And again, we're working on other things to help with collaboration.
See that you don't know where your code is anymore when you have 47 different instances.
Well, yeah, I mean, the cool thing is that you always know you're working on your own personal instance, right? So you're always on that development instance. And the idea of this idea of working locally and being in this interactive mode here is really about, your ability to kind of duplicate what we want. We want this to feel like a local development experience. So I'm here on my local machine, and I make a couple of changes, 5, 6 seconds sync. Hopefully that doesn't disrupt your workflow too much. You can be making multiple changes and things like that, and then you want to go and test it or whatever. And by the way, you don't need to use a front end for this. Like, we just put that in so that you can kind of visualize it, but you can just build APIs, right? You can just go ahead and access this with whatever you want to access it with. But one thing that I just want to show too, because this is another really cool feature, and this has to do with end-to-end tests. So if I'm in my local development instance right here, I'm just going to import the data so that I make sure that the data is right, and I'm going to import it. Hold on, import and overwrite it just to be safe. So I've got my data restored here. I have actually that didn't overwrite. Let me try that again. Dash.
Are you in the right thing? Because that might be the developer.
Well, that's the other thing. We want to find a way, to kind of have some little symbol here, maybe like Netlify does, so that you're in a particular thing. I think I am. Pragmatic though is my development instance. So let me just refresh that. There we go. I guess -O doesn't work, so it's going to be -- overwrite. Anyway, so I've got all my data here. Now here's a really cool thing. I've got a tests directory here. Okay, with an API set of API tests that posts a to do, checks to see if that worked. Checks the output of it, all super simple, right? API.get/to-do/status equal all invoke, and then it checks for a certain thing or whatever. So it's all very, very, very easy to write these tests. And then if I want to run the tests, I just type in test, and that'll go ahead and run these tests for me. These might fail because I did add some data to it, but essentially this just runs the test for me and spits it back. So actually, let me delete these. So these data are not there, and then run the test again. So I go ahead and run test, and hopefully these will pass this time. But essentially super simple for you to run these tests. So all my tests passed, and my schedule passed, which is just a thing here that does a data set on schedule, checks after it runs, and so forth. So it's very, very simple to write tests. And the other really cool thing with this is tests can be destructive, right? Integration tests can be destructive because you want to manipulate data in the database. So if I'm in my interactive development mode and I run tests, this is running on my development instance. So it's just like if I type jest, in my local development when I was running things locally, right? It would do the same thing, testing against my code that I have right in front of me. But if I hit exit here and I'm just here and I type in cloud test now and I run it from outside the interactive shell, this spins up a whole new instance, populates whatever data you need it to populate, runs all your tests, give you all the feedback, and then clears that instance and shuts down that stack for you automatically.
I
so
really
all
like
of these
how you're using the capability of the cloud to put environments up and down and up and down, because that's the magic of the cloud. Like,
it's the magic
why
of the
you need
cloud.
a local machine when you have the most powerful computer in the world, that is the cloud, and everybody
Exactly.
works with internet. Which developer can code without connecting to the internet? So I think this is super cool.
Yeah. So the point of this here is, like, we want people to be hyper productive, right? We want you to write tests. We want you to feel good about it. The CI/CD process. Let me see if I can bring up the. We've got a sample CI/CD GitHub action that one of our team members wrote for one of the interactions that we do, and let's see if I can find it quickly, and I will share it with you because it is. It is pretty cool. What is it called? Yeah, here we go. Beta automation. All right, let me show you. Oh, it's gone now. We might have deleted it. Anyway, so it's basically like two commands. Like you run npm install the serverless/cloud, and then you run npm CI, right, obviously to install any dependencies that you might have, and then you do npm, you run npm test, you run cloud test or npm test, whatever it is that runs the test, and then you do cloud deploy prod or whatever it is. I mean, it's like 4 commands. Yeah. It's so simple,
That's cool.
And it's just meant to make you hyper productive. And we want to even get rid of those 4 commands. But there are some really cool things that you can do here. If we started a new app. You can actually clone apps. We have, I can show this here. Let's see. Let's go to GitHub/serverless/cloud. We've got some example apps that are in here. So we have a booking app. We have a cloud chat.
One of the last questions I had for you is how people can get started after they get the access. Like,
Right. Yeah. Well, the access will happen immediately. You'll get access immediately. It just takes a couple of, takes not even a minute, hopefully, to get the access. And then, this is the sample to do app that we have and so forth. We have a ton of docs here. So if you go into, you can go to, GitHub serverless/cloud if you want to, and this will just give you, basically a link to the docs. But the docs are here, quite a bit of information on getting started, how to do some of this stuff, and then under building applications, a whole bunch of stuff on serverless data, all the different capabilities. I mean, we didn't even get into the meta, being able to show metadata versus not metadata in TTLs and collection namespaces.
We will leave it for the people to read the documentation, or if they're really interested, you can come back again, or someone from your team, and go in more detail.
Right, and one other thing, I didn't even mention this because I know this is important to a lot of people, but this fully supports TypeScript. And one of the cool things about the whole TypeScript thing is that you do not have to worry about compiling or anything like that. So you can just write an app in TypeScript, and we handle all the compilation, the whole deal, and all of it's taken care of for you. And it's the same amount of time that it takes to do the JavaScript as well. And we do a little bit of magic that when we actually publish it, we do, when it's actually on a live stage versus in a development stage, whether we compile it or not compile it, we're using ESM build under the hood or ES build under the hood. Like, we're doing some really cool things. So, but again, the point of this is just make your stuff super simple. And if you've got 2 seconds, I would love to show you a new thing that we're working on that hopefully hasn't broken.
You're like a salesman store if you have 2 seconds.
So because it's just I want to show you this because this is not live yet, but this is just one of the things where, like, if you're looking at this and you're like, oh yeah, that's great, I can build an API and I can schedule some tasks, and okay, data's cool, and I like the workflow. There's a whole bunch of things you can like about this, but one of the things that I'd love to show you is we have, oops, typing in the wrong place. If I go here and cd into data stream. So anyway, to switch over to a dev environment, so I'm going to go ahead and run cloud, get into interactive mode here. So I am in a dev environment right now with a new thing we're doing that are basically data streams. And this isn't complete yet, so this is going to change in the next couple of weeks, but it will give you an idea of where we're kind of going with some of the stuff here. So if I enter my interactive development mode here, and again, I didn't even mention this, but I mean, you have live streaming logs, right? So anytime you do something, you have live streaming logs. So I didn't even mention parameters.
Yeah,
There's so many things that you can do with this.
Or anything like that, but I need people to read the docs.
Right, exactly. Read the docs if you need to. So, we added this new thing called data.on, right? And right now it's changed, but there's going to be like updated and created and deleted and some of these things. But essentially what happens here is if I launch this app, or I launch this window over here. So here's my, this is this test that I'm doing over here. I've got this data.on thing. So if I make a change to this data, so I'm just going to check this off here. This just takes a second, but essentially what this is doing is now this is firing asynchronously after I make my data changes. So anytime I make a change to the data, this is showing me what it was before, and this is showing me what it changed to. So now you can see that this says completed and so forth. So anytime I make a change, if I hit delete here, this is going to go ahead and show me that here's what the item was before, and then it was deleted, so it's not defined. So we're going to clean this up a little bit to make it more standard or whatever. But this, like, how cool is this? Like, so essentially,
this is like Dynamo Streams.
It's like DynamoDB streams, right? And so you can just go ahead and write all of these all of these events, right? So you can just listen for the events. So this essentially, if you're thinking about building an application now, or you've ever built an application where you need to enable DynamoDB streams and set up separate Lambda functions and do all this stuff, this is literally all you have to do. Data.on change. I mean, again, that's going to change to be like
whatever
updated and created.
Is the name when it's released.
Right, whatever the name is when it's released. But this essentially is this idea of this is where we're trying to move to with Serverless Cloud, is that all these things you want to be able to do, workflows and events, being able to emit events when something happens, change data capture stuff, like all that kind of stuff is just built in, and it literally is one line of code. And the way that our system works, because we have behind the scenes what we're calling the serverless runtime, and essentially what this does is this looks at your code and it says, how do I go ahead and take this code and then deploy an infrastructure that it's going to be able to run on? And so we call this infrastructure from code. And so I don't know if anybody knows, but there's no serverless.yaml, there's no template.yaml, there's no CDK constructs, there's none of that here. All you have to do is write this code. And what's really cool about this is these are deterministic builds, right? These are going to be the same every single time it happens. And if you look at this here, we didn't even dive into the dashboard, but here's a very cool thing. I click into dev here. This gives me all kinds of cool metrics. And it also shows me all the API routes that I created. And we're going to add more functionality. We'll be able to dive down into these and see more numbers. You'll be able to run tests against them. You'll be able to invoke them right from here. All my scheduled tasks are over here. So I have all kinds of cool things. And this is another thing, and I should just show you this quickly. Let me one more thing, because this is another powerful thing that is a use case that everybody does in serverless and is incredibly frustrating, I think. So I'm just going to unset a variable here, cloud_stage. All right, and then go back to, actually, I guess I didn't even need to do that there. Let me just go back to my other one here. All right, so let me go, I will exit out of this and then hit J again. And then get back into my interactive mode. So another really cool thing that we have here is if we're using any type of parameter, right? So right now I'm in my personal instance here. So let me go back to FooBar and go into my personal instance. So in any one of these instances here, you have parameters that can be set. And so I have, as part of my, I'm going to go back to this data one here, and I'm going to, rather than showing any data or doing any data commands, I'm just going to actually output this params variable, this little helper function right there. So I'm going to save this, and then I'm going to make sure I'm on the right thing here, which is this one, pragmatic app. And I'm going to open this up and go to /data. And this is going to give me a list of my parameters. So this is essentially is showing me, by default, I have my org name, I have my service name, I have my stage name. So if I did want to write any, I want to write some feature flags or something like that.
Yeah.
And then cloud URL is right there. So now what I can do with this, all right, so we can actually just leave this open. I'll go back into, let's see, close down some of these extra ones that I don't need. Apologies for having so many windows open, but usually it's like five times as many. Right, so I'm going to go into the FooBar service itself, all right? And I'm going to go into parameters. And so now I want to add a new parameter. And maybe I'm going to call this something like, this is my Slack _API token, right? And I'm going to go ahead and just put a value in here of 1, 2, 3. All right, I click add. Now I have the Slack API token. This is available in all of my services. And the cool thing is that when I refresh this here, that is immediately available, right? There's no SSM lookups. There's no caching. There's no anything like that. We know every version and instance of your application that is running. So we can immediately make changes. So if you wanted to use this to do feature flags, right? This is a great use case for this. So I do feature _flag_1, and I'm going to go ahead and here and say, this is set to false. I click add. The second I add it, I come back, I refresh over here, and my feature flag 1 is there, and we say, hey, we just launched a new feature, okay, we're testing it, whatever, and then we're like, all right, well, let's turn it on. I come back over here, I click edit, I change this to true, I hit update here, oops, nope, I don't want to change my password, never. I come back over here, I hit refresh, and now my feature flag is updated to true instantaneously. And the cool thing about this as well is that it updates on every instance that I have, and I can even go back though and I can say like, okay, so this is on my FooBar service. But if I want prod to be something different, I can go into parameters. I see these two things here. It tells me they're inherited, but I want to overwrite this. So in my production, I want my feature flag to be false, right? But I want, it's so weird that it does that. Feature flag to be false, but I still want it to remain true in this this one here. So again, there's just so many cool features that are built in, so many things that we hope are going to make people's lives easier and just get apps up and running like instantaneously.
And I have one last question for you.
Absolutely.
How much this costs?
Yeah, so super good. No, so this is an excellent question because that is one of the things we've kind of been struggling with. So we've talked to so many developers. It's been amazing actually having the opportunity to talk to even more people and understand what their thinking is behind some of these things. So right now, the plan is to try to do a metered service. So we're going to do metered. It's going to be, based off of either execution minutes, or based off of the number of requests, right? Like obviously you've got scheduled tasks that could run for a couple of minutes, and so you can't just say one request and so forth. So the current thinking right now, this pricing will be published by the time this goes live. Actually,
there is no pricing yet. So
there's no pricing yet, but essentially what it's going to be is we're going to give a free tier that allows you to play around with this thing and really get to know it and experience it. And then there are team tiers. So right now it'll probably be $20 a month. That's what we're going to start with. So it'd be $20 a month per developer that wants to use this, but you can build as many applications on it as you want. You get a very generous free tier as part of that $20 a month. So pretty much any side project app or thing like that you want to build, it costs about $20 a month, but you could build 20 of them, right? As long as you don't go over the free tier usage, you'll be able to do that and build whatever you want and build a bunch of side projects. With the paid version, you'll get custom domains and some of these other things, CI/CD and some things like that. And then if you go over that, there's a slight premium on top of what you would pay if you use Lambda directly. But we're trying to bundle everything together so you're not paying API gateway and data transfer and Lambda requests and Lambda execution time. We're trying to bundle that all together into one really simple billing metric. So again, we're going to experiment with that right now during our sort of exclusive launch phase. We're not charging anybody, so just go ahead and build. We want to see what people build. But that will be the expectation, is that to keep building on this after, sort of this period, and once, sort of if you're above the free tier, then we would, or above the free plan, essentially it would be about $20 a month is where we're thinking right now.
Yeah, but that's cool to know. So people can now go and try it with no questions asked, and then they might have to pay like a monthly fee, but it's not that much money. So
correct, yeah, it's not
and you
thousands
get all the
of dollars a month. It's right.
Yeah, of building. This is super cool. I would really love to know all the dark magic behind it, because I don't know how you do it in 5 seconds. That maybe for another episode.
Right. Yeah, and like I said, it's gonna get even shorter than that. We're already working on some really cool syncing technology, that basically is directly updating your code, and of course it's all meant to be, you've got the development environments, and you've got your staging environments, and then your production environments or your shared environment, things like that, and it's all, depending on where it deploys to, it's all using the same exact type of infrastructure. We're compiling things the same. There's some magic we do to make the dev faster than the deployment faster on dev than we do for like a production instance or whatever, but like there's a whole bunch of really cool things happening behind the scenes. And again, I hope people love this, because I started building apps on it, and it's like, it is blowing my mind. Like, I'm like, wait, what else? What step did I miss? And it's like, oh, I didn't miss any steps. Like, it's just, everything is working. Just, it's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. So hyper productive, massively scalable. Again, it's all running on serverless infrastructure behind the scenes. Yeah, so I just hope people check it out and love it and give us feedback. If there's something you can't do with it, there's something you want it to do, just let us know. And we're building it. We're building it for you. So we're building it for all the developers
Serverless
out there.
Inc. always, I think, one of the best things is the experience for developers from Serverless framework. It's amazing. It was so intuitive to start with serverless, using serverless framework, and this is super intuitive as well. So I think people out there know how developers think. So I think it's pretty cool to see all this. Yep. And I think with all this information, everybody should go and click in that link and get starting.
Definitely.
Playing. So thank you very much, Jeremy, for being here today. And I'm pretty sure everybody knows you, but if they want to find you, the links are in the description box.
Yeah, find me on Twitter. I'm on Twitter, and happy to chat with people about Serverless Cloud, or just about serverless in general. I love serverless. I keep telling this, like, I'm working on this product. I'm super passionate about it, but I'm super passionate about just the future of application development and modern applications. And so, I'm happy to talk to you about any of that stuff. Sign up for my newsletter, listen to my podcast. Lots of different places to get really great serverless information. And again, it's not my information, it's me talking to amazing people who are doing this, and me pulling articles from amazing people that are writing that.
That newsletter, so I love it. It's just like, since you have done
that,
I don't read any, I don't go around finding for articles. It's like,
right, I'll do all the work for you. I'll find all the cool serverless news and articles and tutorials and stuff, and keep everyone up to date. So offbynone.io, and I'm sure you'll put the links down there. So
obviously,
thank you so much.
So thank you very much, Jeremy, and have a great day. Ciao, ciao.
All right, you too. Thank you.
This is all for today. I hope you liked this video. If you want to get in touch with Jeremy or get access to this Serverless Cloud service, the links are in the description box. Let me know in the comments what you think is the role of developers nowadays. What you think about this topic. Is it something that is interesting for you? And I'll see you next week with another episode of FooBar. Ciao, ciao!